floor, can you sense within yourself, if you were to roll to sit up, which way? Which way is the most obvious for you? Now, what's obvious for you doesn't, like we saw, what was the, I'm sorry, the person's name that I was just with? Doris. We saw with Doris that what she experiences is the way to get up isn't necessarily the easiest way to get up. And that's true within all of us, depending again on the degree of our study and the sense of efficiency that we're able to embody. But for you, just for the moment, if you were to roll to sit up and make the very first movements of making this rolling to sit up, and so that you sense how you connect to the floor, because it's the way your ribs and your pelvis and your ankles and your feet and your head begin to engage within you for the process of rolling to sit up. Where your ribs go, how your ribs begin to find the floor. And if you were to turn to your stomach, which way would you turn? Some of you will find that turning to your stomach can be on the same side or perhaps on the opposite side as the way you would go to sit up. You may have had, for example, some kind of an injury at some point in time to one side, where you've learned to make all the compensatory movements around the other side. There are all kinds of different things that happen to us. Now, please come and lie on your right side again for a moment. Bring your right arm long in front of you. Place your left hand on the floor, wherever you place. Place your left knee in front of your right. And perhaps take a little moment and recover one or two elements of this lesson. The very first part of the lesson was to ask you to slide your knee forward a little bit. So as you slide your knee forward, you're invited to find the moment that you slide your knee forward, your left knee is on the floor in front of your right knee's behind, and to find within yourself the sensation as to how this movement speaks to where your head moves in space. And so make this movement once or twice of taking your knee forward. Please make the movement once or twice of listening to where your head rolls, and then change it so that you slide your arm backwards, just a little, so that once or twice you slide your right arm backwards underneath yourself, not upwards, backwards, as if you're going to lift yourself to see the wall above you, the stairs above you. So you slide your arm back as if to come onto. And you notice on this side where you've placed your left hand. Did you place your left hand above your right arm or below your right arm? Don't just see, there's a tendency when you hear these things to correct something, which is only asking you to observe. What do you do? Yeah. So please make the movement once or twice of sliding your knee forward as your arm slides back, as if to look up to see the wall, and the wall at the far end of the room where the stairs are that we come down on. So that it's as if you were a baby and there was toys there, or there was something there, or mommy was coming, or the puppy was coming, or there was something there that was worth moving towards. Yeah. So make the movement to make this movement so that you combine the movements. And as we studied yesterday, you watch as you make the movement, as your knee comes forward and as your arm comes back, you see the timing as to when your eyes finally turn up to see. Do your eyes hang? Does your head hang? And then your eyes come to the horizon relatively immediately? Does your head hang and then come? Or do you lift immediately? It's just an exploration for us to see the organization. Now please change to the other side and explore the movement for a moment, so that it's just, this is a moment to recover something that you played with yesterday. And you might find that today, how many find that today it's more familiar? That somehow the notion of everything being coordinated comes a little bit more clearly for you. It means to lie in such a way now that your right knee is in front of your left. You find where you place your right hand. I was making the movements a little bit earlier on the floor, and it's always amazing to me as to how it is that when I make these movements, I roll so differently from one side to the other. If I roll towards my left side, I place my right hand below my arm. If I roll to the right, I place my left hand above my arm. It's an interesting conundrum for me, how it is that I find this way of rolling across my back that creates for me a different potential. So you notice that as your knee goes forward, whether this invites the lifting of your head, is it going to be 1, 2? Or does your head just automatically, somehow the movement invites something automatic to take place? And then make it so that as you make it so that you bring your arm back once or twice, slide your arm back underneath you, and you sense that as your arm slides back, as if you're going to rest on your forearm. This is a common stage in baby crawling development. This moment when the baby makes this point of turning over themselves, and when they can roll to their back and roll back into this position and roll to their back and roll back to this position, you'll see that as they make this movement of rolling from this position to the next position and rolling back and rolling backwards and forwards, the ease with which they can make this movement, the lightness as to where they turn their head, it means that the left leg lengthens underneath them, the right knee comes forward, the arm comes back, and as when they go all the way so that their pelvis is more or less on the ground, then the whole process by which their head lifts is supported by the way that their feet and their ankles come away from the ground. It increases that whole process of the whole chain of movement from behind, creates the increased ability for the baby to lift their head and have their head on the horizon. Marvelous. Marvelous. All right, will you please now lie on your back? And you remember yesterday that when we did this movement of rolling from one side to the other, it was during this process of rolling from one side to the other that several people could not coordinate the movement of rolling to one side to the other, utilizing the image that we started with. The image that we started with was rolling to the right in such a way that when you were lying on the right side, that your left knee was in front of your right knee. And when you rolled to the left, your right knee landed in such a way that it was in front of your left knee. But somewhere in the movement, the way that people historically maintain the movement in their pelvis led them, instead of being able to make this particular scissoring movement, made the movement that led them to sitting up. So just for the moment, please, Bend your knees, bring your knees over yourself, bring your arms over yourself, and begin to roll a little to the right and a little to the left. And observe in the very beginning moment of rolling, whether you what is the image that you have in the way that your legs are going to participate in this movement. It means that your hands are hanging down. It's like a baby looking at something. This central line is so important to baby development. So much of our activities and movements in life is we find this central line. So please make the movement in such a way that as you roll to the left, it means that as you roll to the left, and here we see already several people rolling to the left, and they find that their left knee comes up and the right leg moves behind. Now, it means that as you roll to the left, it means that the left leg begins to lengthen as the right leg begins to come where? As you roll to the left. As you roll to the right. Now, what does your right leg do? There's a particular scissoring movement that you're going to make if you're going to be able to turn yourself from this position of being on your back to being on your stomach. So please make the movement in such a way that as you make this movement of rolling, that you can roll in such a way that you come onto your stomach. It means that you roll in such a way that you end up with your forearm resting under your chest and your opposite hand, your hand resting on the floor in a supportive position. It means to truly, truly come to the position that we practiced. It means to create the constraints in yourself that you can come to the position that we can go from one side to the other and you're resting over your forearm. This particular place of creeping, is it creeping or crawling? Crawling. But it's homolateral. Babies in this moment are going to crawl in a homolateral way, maybe even if only for a day or two, but they'll scooch themselves from here. They'll just, nope, they won't go from elbow to elbow. They'll only scooch. They'll just pull up over the one arm. There'll be a little bit of scooching and the one hand will support, and there's a little bit of scooching to pull themselves along. Very nice. Lovely. Please leave that and rest for a moment, and lie on your back and rest for a moment. Please place both hands overhead so that you have kind of an X. Your legs are somewhat spread. Your right arm is in line more or less with your left leg, and your left arm is more or less in line with your right leg. And whichever arm you wish, it's okay for you to determine in this moment. Oops. Time out. Let's take a moment so that we can clear the food cart here. Are you delivering sandwiches for everybody? No, she's not delivering sandwiches for everybody. Oh, what kind of place is this? All right, so just for the moment, just please begin to slide one arm or the other. And remember, we played with this notion, this infinitely thin point. It's a particular state that when you're not right and not left, when you're not engaged in either, then it's a third kind of engagement. Yeah? So begin to slide your hand in the direction, your right hand over the top towards this point of not right and not left. And watch as you make this sliding movement of how it is that you begin to engage yourself for rolling. And in this moment, again, you can notice that as you make this movement of rolling, whether or not you're going to roll in such a way that you're actually looking upward, or are you actually making the movement to roll downward into a rolling sitting up position? We looked at these different things that tend to happen. And so watch for yourself as you roll to the left, whether or not this is the side, maybe yes, maybe no, that you really find yourself flexing on, or is there a moment in which the distance between your head and your pelvis gets longer as you go? Your abdomen moves forward. And then come across to the other side and notice how you find the floor and your ribs differently on one side and the other. You can see that we watched this morning this whole notion of how people will roll. Now let's recover for a moment a little bit of the lesson from yesterday. Please make it so that you lie with your right arm about 35 degrees away from you. Begin to slide your left arm in an arc up and over the top of your head, and come back. And watch as your arm slides in an arc overhead, you begin to make the movement. And as you begin to make the movement, you observe on this side whether or not what your right arm does, whether it slides away from you, whether it slides towards you, so that you make this movement of coming up and connecting. Connecting what? It means to begin as you make the movement to bring your knee towards you. Come back again and interlace your fingers behind your head. And please, with your fingers behind your head, begin to roll your head to the right and left in such a way that as you roll your head to the right and left, as you go to the left, you begin to lift your head as if to come towards your left elbow to the floor. As you roll across yourself, you begin to lower your right elbow to the floor. And it's a reason that I'm not in changing this movement, your head, your fingers interlaced, but if you watch really carefully as you roll yourself across the floor, there may in fact be a moment. There may be a moment that as you come across the floor, that somehow you come across your ribs in such a way that you go up into one shoulder and down over the other shoulder. It's worth the investigation to know so that you can sense whether you roll in such a way that you roll up and over your shoulder. Now, please keep your nose to the ceiling and begin to side bend. It means to make a big arc with your arms. Side bend. Your arms are open and wide, but you side bend from side to side. You side bend in such a way that your elbows make this big arc. Hands behind your head. Hands behind your head. And then please make the movement that when you make the arc and you come to the extent of the movement to the left, then you lift your head up and over your left elbow. And when you make the arc and you roll back and you slide across your head and shoulders and hands and arms across, and you slide across, and when you come to the place where your right elbow has come towards your knee, bring your elbow and your knee together, and when you slide across, lift your head up and over your elbow here so that you go from one side to the other. That's it. Please leave it for a moment. Now please cross your left arm across your chest down towards somewhere above the iliac crest, somewhere above your pelvis, and begin to imagine that someone, or to slide your arm away from you. It means that you begin to roll yourself in such a way that you begin to come up and over your right elbow. And as you come over your right elbow, you listen to when your left knee begins to participate in the movement. So that you slide in such a way that you lift your head as if to come up and over your left elbow. It means that your head is going to lift, not turn away from your elbow. It's not to see the wall to the side or to see the wall above you. It's as if to turn yourself over your elbow. It's as if the entire movement is oriented to the front of the room here. So that as you make the movement as if to come up in such a way that the front of the room, that you could turn yourself to the front of the room. It means if you're going to turn to the front of the room, there has to be some way in which you place your arm, your right arm, in such a way that it doesn't interfere with the direction. Ah, that's the point I forgot yesterday. There was another very important point. We saw yesterday what's his name? Huh? Say it again. Lucky? Lockie. When Lockie made the movement from one side to the other, didn't we see how he found different points of support? And when he changed the point of support, it significantly changed his ability to make the movement. On one side, when he made the movement, he moved his point of support closer to him, which interfered with how high he could lift his chest, yes? And on the other side, he made the movement in such a way that he put the point of support so far away from himself that he could lift his chest significantly higher. Now, if we're doing this exact same thing here, come around for a moment. Let's just see someone. I don't know. Let's just watch you. Yeah, it doesn't make any difference. So now, if she makes this movement as she starts to come, and we say that the front of the room is her point of orientation, yeah? Now, it's fine. Look what she did. She kept her arm in the same place, yeah? So that gives her a potential of movement to come over her arm so that she could, in fact, make this movement. Go ahead and come back. Touch your elbow to the ground. That's right. So that she can make this movement. And roll back. I'll help you. That's right. So that she can make this movement, and she could. I could give her a change. I could say, come this way. Come here. That's right. From there, she can come through every point with where her arm is in contact with the ground. Go ahead and sink back. Don't pull. Just sink back. That's right. Now we can see that with this. But if as she starts the movement, she puts her arm here, what does that do? It automatically changes what she can do. It creates another set of constraints, doesn't it? Yeah. Now, anywhere along this movement, she can make this movement in any place and have every possibility of this arc being a place that she could roll over. Yes? It depends on how she is going to place her arm to create the conditions by which she can make the movement to turn forward. And so again, we can invite, always inviting, where are the points of support going to be to provide me with the accuracy with which the movement's going to take place. The first time that we go through these lessons, just even to get right and left and to begin to make these moves to turn is a huge thing. Now there's another level of discrimination that we can begin to make, is how do we continue to find the points that we're moving over so that we move with more and more accuracy to what it is we'd like to do, okay? So organize yourself in such a way that you're going to turn and sit and face upwards, face towards the front of the room. In other words, as you get up, you have the orientation, and you can play with Watch what happens to you if you put your arm out to the side. How that changes the shape of what the movement can be. Yeah? Where does it turn you? It must lead to turning to a different point, to a different direction. So it truly becomes a question of where is the most proximal point. Now, I can tell you this. Please sit up for a moment. Sit in such a way that your feet are to the left, and place your hands in front of you in a protective way. That's right. And think that you have to go down to the right and continue to protect the front of yourself the entire time. You're not going to put your arms in a silly place, are you? In other words, you're going to be able to go down. There's no way in the world that you would protect yourself with your elbow way out there. Directly in front. Yeah. Where will you, that's right, where will you organize yourself that if you have to maintain some sense of self-preservation throughout the movement, then it will give you a completely different sense that if your hands have to be in front of you and your elbows do you protect here? Where would you do? If you're in a place where you have to protect yourself, yeah? So the question is where's the point of the protection and what shape does that begin to give you to the lesson? So go and follow this all the way to your lying. And now can you change the orientation so that when you finish going down, you end up with your feet between you and your opponent? Can you change the orientation? Yes. As soon as you start to think of it in a functional way, and you have to be able to get up and face an opponent, or you have to be able to go back immediately and protect yourself by putting your feet between you and the opponent, there's no way in the world that you protect yourself against the opponent if you end up facing over there, or if your feet end up over there. Yeah. So again, yeah, beautiful. Now we start to see a different orientation. See, if this was a samurai culture, yeah, and the samurai was existing with how that they hold their sword, then there's no way in the world that the samurai is going to do something that they don't have access to the sword. Yeah. So the whole process of being able to go down and to come up, and if you look at the whole art of Iaido, which is an extraordinary art, the samurai, or the person who's practicing Iaido, learns to draw their sword and to come to standing and to face in the movement any direction and to cut from any position, being able to draw and cut. And so they have an accuracy. So it's not that they draw and they cut and then they can make the movement and then they can cut and then they can make the movement and then they can cut and then they can make the movement and they can cut, and they can do that on their knees, they can do it from their back, they can do it from every position, right? All right, so now please explore the movement a little bit to the other side, to the left. So that you can go down in such a way that the orientation is such that if you get up, when you go down, you can keep some way of preserving, some protective means if you need to. Where will you place your hand and arm, and how will you organize yourself in such a way that you, now, how can you take another step? How would you do this without falling? We said yesterday, there was something we said yesterday about falling. What did we say yesterday about falling? Something that Ruth discovered too. What was it? At that moment that you fall, your system is having to capture between where you were and when you land, and then to reconfigure where you are, but you don't know for that moment where you are in space. So you can make this into a higher criterion of where you'll place the points of support, the balances and the counterbalances. What's going on? Oh, good. Right. That's 100%, you know. Absolutely impossible is 100%. 100%? There was not one single moment of aha, of hello. Okay. Oh, there you did something. So it wasn't absolute. Do you understand? It wasn't absolute. Yeah, something within you had an inspiration and you found something. Okay, marvelous. Now we can take these elements further and further, but we're good for the time being. Please come on your back. Bring your knees over your chest. Bring your hands over your face. Now, will you please begin to make the movement of going to the right in such a way that you sit up? That the movement leads you to sitting up and come back down. It means the organizing. Will you please go to the left in such a way that you roll to your stomach? Will you please go to the left in such a way that you sit up? Will you please roll to the right and go to your stomach? Will you roll back across yourself and sit up? Will you roll back across yourself and sit up? Will you roll back across yourself and go to your stomach? Will you roll back across yourself and go to your stomach? Can you catch yourself in the micro moment of decision? Can you see how in order to do one of these, you have to inhibit the other? You can't do them both. Will you please roll across yourself and sit up and go to your stomach at the same time? That's called co-contraction, or that's or cross motivation. That is a living example of cross motivation. Yeah? Cross motivation is very simply explained. I want to do something, I should do something, and neither takes place. It's called being a mother. Is that what you said? All right. Please be very attentive with yourself. Come back, lie on your back for a moment. So that you, and bring your hands by your face and your knees above your chest. Put your fingers to click. And so, great. So now, click at the moment that you inhibit the other. So we have to start. So please roll to your right side in such a way to go to your stomach. How did you decide that? It came out of something. So go to your right side and roll to your stomach. Where must your left knee be if you roll to your stomach? Your left knee must, that's it. And roll back slowly and roll to the left side and come to sit up. Watch with the moment that you inhibit the one, click at the moment you inhibit so that the other, and play for yourself, making the different things, but notice that micro moment when you inhibit one so the other can take place. Okay, so you can make the movement for yourself for a moment. Go to sitting. Go back to the left side, go to your stomach. Each time that you make the movement, something must be stopped so the other pattern can emerge. So make it really obvious. The sense of yourself, one is a completely different organization than the other. Please go to the left and roll to your stomach. Please roll back. Please go to the left and roll up to sitting. What must you do? Please roll to the right and roll to your stomach. Please roll back. Please roll to your right and come up to sitting. What must you change? How does your relationship with your ribs and the floor change? And how do you notice that one is different than the other? Something profound takes place within us as the motor plan, which takes less than 1/10 of a second to form. It forms before we can observe it. We only can observe how fast the motor plan has emerged. All right. Please leave it and roll to your side and come to standing and tune into your experience. Internally, biologically, in the sense of a kind of fitness, this ability How do you find your experience now? The availability to turn right and left. The ability to look up and look down. The ability to look down on one side and look up on the other. And then to change, to look down on the other side and to look up. What happens to the overall sense of availability for you as a human being relative to being in the world of gravity, relative to being in a fit to meet change? I personally don't think that there's any practice that's more empowering than this practice, this moment, yeah? Of just having within yourself the sense that you can meet the world around yourself with a particular kind of availability, yeah? All right, shall we take a little break and we'll bring out the tables so that the other person can practice?